Hello and welcome back to ALECtv here from beautiful San Diego, California for our States and Nations Policy Summit. Joining us today on ALECtv are three wonderful guests: David Biddulph, co-founder of Americans Prosperity First, Jim Rubens of American Promise, and Sam Fieldman of Wolfpack. We'll be discussing today the issues of campaign finance reform as well as fiscal responsibility. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us here today on ALECtv. It's wonderful to see you all. Let's kick things off by starting about discussing why you are all here. Now, obviously, San Diego is a beautiful place. San Diego is a wonderful place to come and enjoy a vacation, but we're also here to talk policy. So I'll start with you, Jim. You work for American Promise. Why are you here at our ALEC States and Nations Policy Summit?
The states have a vital role in playing in resolving major unaddressed issues confronting the United States of America. Congress is not tackling these problems. They include things like term limits, fiscal responsibility, the corrupt campaign money system. Congress will not deal with them. We're here together because we all agree that the states have a vital role under the system of federalism in forcing solutions.
Absolutely. Samuel, you work for Wolfpack. What's your organization's focus and mission when you come here to States and Nations Policy Summit?
So our focus is on being able to work together on where we do agree and on reaching out and talking to others who may not agree so that we can bring together a big tent. The fact is, with the way Article 5 of the Constitution is written, there's no way to amend the Constitution without overwhelming agreement. The issue of the corrupting influence of money in politics has that overwhelming agreement, and we need to be able to work together with all walks of life, people who may agree or disagree on various issues, all coming together to support an effort on this amendment.
Absolutely. And David, when it comes to you, why you came to this organization, why you're here today, you obviously work as the founder of Americans Prosperity First. What's your organization's mission and goal, and what do you want to see achieved hopefully this week here in San Diego?
Well, this week is to educate state legislators on their power to prevent the federal government from bankrupting Social Security, national security, and the American dream. Which, without some kind of a fiscal constraint on their excessive spending and borrowing, is very likely to happen in the intermediate term. So our real short-term goal is to get one more state to apply under Article 5 of the Constitution and call the Convention of States together to actually draft a fiscal responsibility amendment to the United States Constitution as soon as next summer.
Awesome. So let's first discuss the issue of campaign finance reform, and I'll go to you, Sam and Jim, on this issue. Back in 2002, McCain-Feingold legislation was passed to overhaul campaign finance reform, but even since that bill, the Supreme Court's weighed in. Both parties are unhappy to certain extents. I'll start with you, Jim. What are the issues your organization sees in regards to the need to reform campaign financing, and how there's a trickle-down effect or a ripple effect from this issue?
What we've seen since the court decision struck down McCain-Feingold and a bunch of other state and federal laws, we've had an explosion of non-candidate spending and contributions, an explosion to the point where most of the money going into the political system is no longer controlled by the candidate. Most of it is from, particularly in swing elections, from out-of-state sources, and it's diluting federalism. It's causing the values and viewpoints and issues priorities of people who live in Washington, D.C. and New York and California to be inserted and to replace the viewpoints, values, preferences of people in my state of New Hampshire. And this system is destroying federalism. I believe it's also tied in to the fiscal problems of the United States of America, because the system of campaign money has promoted what I call crony capitalism. It's replaced free market capitalism with crony capitalism because the people with the money supporting politicians want more spending, and they don't care that it's being printed and bankrupting the United States of America. So I see there's a tie-in between our organizations and our missions. There's a unitary theme to these systemic problems.
Absolutely. Sim, I'll go to you now. Your organization also focuses on the matter of campaign finance reform in regards to ethics in the funding of campaigns. What's your organization's mission in this regard, and how would you respond to Jim's efforts in his organization? How do you two align or parallel and whatnot?
Yeah, absolutely. American Promise focuses on getting an amendment through Congress. Wolfpack focuses on the process of getting an amendment through the states. And that makes us strong allies. It does not put us in any kind of competition. We agree fundamentally on the issue. And the fact is, historically, amendments to the Constitution have required pushes from multiple different paths in order to be successful. It's virtually unheard of for any amendment to just have one prod pushing for success. Ultimately, we're seeing states like Montana and Alaska having federal organizations taking away their efforts that they've been putting forward to address their own issues and prevent corruption. And we need those states and all the states around the country to fight back and to make sure that they're empowered to control their own protection against corruption.
David, one thing that Jim alluded to a moment ago is the issue of fiscal responsibility and how campaign finance reform impacts that. What have you seen in regards to campaign financing, the impact it's made on fiscal responsibility, and also the problems of fiscal responsibility of itself? How do these issues intermingle, and ultimately, what are the main issues that we have to address in regards to fiscal responsibility and good budgeting?
Right now we have no provision in the Constitution to enforce fiscal responsibility on the federal government. So every favor that comes along with campaign finance funding gets funded, unless it's ridiculous. But the point is that the sky's the limit. You can hand out favors all day long and build up your war chest so you can keep in office for the next 40, 50 years. But it's more than that. It's in the military. We just heard testimony from the former vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that it's very difficult to have cost-effective procurement because contributors influence elected officials to build tanks that they don't need, or it just goes on and on and on. So the military-industrial complex is alive and well, and that's another symptom of the relationship between campaign finance reform and restoring fiscal responsibility.
So definitely, I think the one thing I see, from the three of you, don't agree on everything necessarily. There are differences in your opinions and approach, but you all seem to be in agreement here that there needs to be serious reforms in regards to the public ethics and the way things happen, because there's a significant effect down the line in regards to the budget, in regards to the fiscal responsibility. As someone who's a young person, that matters to me because I got to pay the check one day. So before we close out here today, I want to go down the line again one more time, and I want to discuss how can our members at ALEC get involved? How can those watching on YouTube today, if they want to learn more about your organizations, about your efforts, and perhaps put some skin in the game themselves into seeing some reforms, what can they do? I'll start with you, Jim. How can they get involved with American Promise?
Well, you can go to AmericanPromise.net to get involved and see more about what we're talking about. We perceive, even though we seek to have Congress draft the anti-corruption campaign money amendment, we see it as vital that state legislators weigh in on this thing. We see it as already 22 state legislatures and ballot initiatives has asked Congress to adopt, to draft our amendment. We would like to have more states become involved in this fashion. So state legislators, we seek them to get involved to raise the pressure on Congress. Congress will not act without that type of pressure.
And AmericanProgress.org is the website?
AmericanPromise.net.
Promise.org, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Samuel.
.net.
.net. There we go. Samuel, how can they get involved in Wolfpack, those who are watching right now? How can they get involved with you and your organization?
So again, wolf-pack.com. That's the best way to find out about the organization. Right now we have a rescission fight going on in New Jersey. In 2014, the Koch brothers came out and testified to try to block an Article 5 convention call for campaign finance reform. And a teenager from the local area, Walker Green, led a huge group of local volunteers, and the out-of-state lobbyists could not match that. The Republican billionaires were not able to block it. Right now there's an effort to rescind it, and the vote is actually tomorrow in the New Jersey State Senate. And that's being funded, instead of by the right-wing billionaires, by the left-wing billionaires. Soros and other people who are similarly minded, groups that they fund, are behind the effort to push that. So we're asking, especially right now, a lot of people who would be listening to this know a lot of legislators in New Jersey. We're asking you to call them. We're asking you to help fight to prevent the rescission or amend the rescission so that it saves the the 2014 call for campaign finance reform, and you can reach me at any time to work on that as well. You can reach me directly at sam@wolf-pack.com. I'm happy to have people reach out directly as well.
So the good news in the Garden State is there's bipartisanship. The bad news, it's not the right kind, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's the
They're
thing
getting along
is-
at the wrong time. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, you may agree or disagree with Charles Koch, you may agree or disagree with George Soros, but the one thing that they both agree on is the one thing that you should not agree with them on, which is they want the big money interests to be in control of the government rather than we the people.
Could I
Jim,
rise
quickly, yeah.
Could I rise in defense of Charles Koch?
Go ahead.
He and George Soros have co-founded the Quincy Institute. They're in favor of restraint in military operations, military procurement around the world. They will not achieve their goal until they deal with the corrupt campaign money system, because that system drives the absence of military restraint and endless war. So we eagerly look forward to a meeting with Charles Koch to discuss this.
Perfect. Hopefully he sees this video.
I hope he does.
And in regards to the issue of the matter of solving issues through campaign finance reform, making sure we get to those important issues like fiscal responsibility, David, how can they get involved? How can listeners get involved with American Prosperity First? How can those watching today learn about your organization more and get involved?
So the easiest way for elected representatives or candidates for the state or federal government is go to our website, which is letusvoteforbba.org. That's letusvoteforbba.org. And go to the pledge tab at the top and sign the pledge. You will learn there what you can do as either in Congress or as in the State House, specifically what you need to do to move this process to a convention and then to ratification of an amendment that will prevent an economic disaster in this country if we don't stop Congress from overspending.
Gotcha. Well, Jim, David, Samuel, thank you for joining us here today on ALECtv. It's been a pleasure. And thank you to our listeners watching at home. Be sure to stay tuned for more of the ALECtv here from San Diego at our States and Nations Policy Summit. I'm your host, Matt Fisher, and I'll see you all again soon.